What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 129. My name is Victor Vasquez. Appreciate you joining me on this podcast where I talk about new movies that come out in streaming or in theaters. We break them down here. First, I talk about some of the non-spoiler stuff that I enjoyed or didn't enjoy. That way, it kind of gives you an idea whether it's a movie that you want to check out. And then the second part of the podcast, we go a little bit more in depth. We spoil some stuff, give some pros and cons, and then at the end of the podcast, we decide, is this film timeless after one viewing? Can I see myself watching this movie various different times in the future? Does it stand the test of time, essentially? Now, before we jump into the new movie that we're talking about this week, I did want to call out that the Timeless Movie Podcast is available on platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. I would really appreciate it if you gave us a listen, subscribed, leave some comments. Definitely want to interact with you guys and talk more about the movies that either I've covered already in 2025 or any other future release that's coming later this year. Okay, let's stop wasting time. Let's go ahead and dive into episode 129, in which we are talking about the film from Lionsgate, directed by Trey Edward Schultz, and it is called Hurry Up Tomorrow. This one stars Abel Tesfaye, Barry Keoghan, and Jenna Ortega. Now, if you have heard that title before, Hurry Up Tomorrow, well, most likely you have, because it is actually the same name as The Weeknd's latest album, Hurry Up Tomorrow. So little background why I wanted to watch this movie. I am a big Weeknd fan. I wouldn't say I'm like a super fan. I've been listening to his music since Starboy. That album, I think, came out in 2016. I'm pretty sure I'll have a lot of Weeknd and Abel Tesfaye fans correct me in the comments, but I believe it did come out in 2016. And from then on, every new release, I have just been on top of his music, just trying to listen to every single detail, trying to understand all the things that he's trying to say in his music. And I've really loved every bit of it. And I've had a chance to actually see him in concert. So as soon as I found out that first in January of 2025, he was coming out with a new album, I was super pumped. But then I found out that he was actually going to have a movie come out as well, starring Barry Keoghan and Jenna Ortega. So that got me even more hyped, because I thought there was going to be even more music that we were about to get in the future. So that's really the prime reason. He's an artist that I really enjoy the type of music that he comes out with, and I wanted to hopefully support him in regards to some of the new things that he wants to do in his career. I did see a trailer. It looked very interesting, kind of like a thriller type of horror element as well. Now I think it's a good time to jump over into the non-spoiler section. That way I can kind of give you a little bit more flushed out thoughts of this experience after I got to check it out on opening night. Okay, after leaving the theaters, watching Hurry Up Tomorrow, I gotta say that this movie was okay. It wasn't terrible. There's definitely been worse movies that I've seen in the past, but it also wasn't anything good or great. It had potential to be really good. It had some interesting concepts. I will say that the performances of Jenna Ortega, Abel Tesfaye, and Barry Keoghan, they were pretty good. I enjoyed it. Nothing looked, out of place, or nothing looked very forced. What they were given, they did really well in those parts. What I will say, though, is what makes it okay and just not anything, that stands out is the story. The story itself just feels like something is missing. It feels like, there's not something that really hooks you as you're watching it. Now, it gives you little tidbits to, if you're a fan of The Weeknd, it kind of gives you these little Easter eggs of things and things that maybe you have experienced either listening to his music or in music videos. But other than that, just like on its own, I just didn't feel like there was something that hooked me all the way through. Now, I stayed all the way through and enjoyed the experience because, again, he is an artist that I really enjoy, and I enjoyed the music that came out. But I feel like that's what the film was really the predominant piece of what was missing. Is just there wasn't something that really grabbed you and really kept you on the edge of your seat, especially how they advertise it to be a thriller, which I feel like it wasn't really that much, all being said. All right, let me give you a little synopsis of Hurry Up Tomorrow. That way you have an idea as to what this movie is about. Essentially, the movie introduces us to Abel, who is a singer. At the beginning of the movie, he actually finds out that his girlfriend just broke up with him, left a voicemail saying how bad of a person he was. And so you immediately get dropped into him preparing before he has to go out on stage for a concert performance. And as soon as he listens to that voicemail, you start noticing that his life starts spiraling a little bit out of control. And so, everything's fine. He performs, but then he starts going out to party, he starts taking some drugs, and then you can start seeing that the voicemail kind of starts tearing pieces out of him. It starts making him go a little bit crazier, a little bit more frustrated, and then eventually, because of all of that, mental and emotional kind of thinking about what that relationship meant to him, he ends up going now, taking drugs, not being prepared for a performance, and then he goes out and he loses his voice. And it's a very traumatic experience for him, especially because for Abel Tesfaye, it actually happened to him a couple years ago in L.A. And so he experiences that, and then he notices and he runs into this girl named Anima, who is played by Jenna Ortega. She was at the concert where he lost his voice, and then they end up having a little bit of a connection. They go out, they have a fun night. And then as you get to see their relationship kind of grow a little bit more, you start to realize that Anima is not what she seems. And so now Abel is just completely caught off guard with what she is trying to do in his life. And so I'll leave it at that. That's essentially what the movie is about. Again, overall, it has some good parts. I did enjoy some aspects, which I will be delving into in the prose area. Again, I just feel like there was something that and I like to use this phrase, it's one of my favorite phrases, but it didn't pack a punch. There wasn't something that really left me almost like wanting to think about it more after the theaters. After I left, I was like, okay, well, that was an experience, that was a movie. But I was hoping that there would be more, that it would kind of like make me think about, oh, okay, what does this represent, or what does this mean? And it didn't really leave me with that kind of a feeling. In regards to a recommendation, I will say that if you are a Weeknd fan, if you already love his music videos, and the things that he puts out, I would say that you can definitely check this out in theaters or streaming, either or. Just, make your own opinion, form your own kind of thoughts in regards to what, you might think about in regards to this experience of Hurry Up Tomorrow. There's already a lot of people being negative and saying that this movie is just terrible. Again, everybody has their own opinions and thoughts. Again, I didn't think it was great. I didn't think it was good. I also didn't think it was terrible. I thought it was just right in the middle. Okay. If you're not a fan of The Weeknd or his music, I would say that you can just skip this. This is not going to convince you or change your mind. Maybe you might get very inspired, or you might enjoy the music that you hear in the film, which would then make you go out and check out his music. But again, if you're not a big fan of his and you already don't like his music, you can just skip this one altogether. Speaking of skipping, there's one thing that we don't skip here on this podcast, and that is talking about pros and cons. All right, so now we are going to jump into the spoiler section of this movie. So if you do not want to be spoiled or have like a specific plot point ruined before you watch the movie, jump out of the video now. That way you can kind of check the movie out, make your own opinions, and then come back to the podcast and leave your comments below as well. All right, let's go ahead and dive into the first pro that I have for Hurry Up Tomorrow. Very easily, biggest positive I can say is the camera work and the cinematography for this film are incredible. I really enjoyed it. There are so many moments where, especially in the first act, you have these awesome one takes where it follows different characters and it kind of shows you a little bit more about their character, right? What are they specifically going through in these moments? For example, you have a one take where right from the beginning of the movie, you have Abel, who is preparing, getting his mind right, and almost kind of going through a pre-game ritual before he goes on stage. And that entire backstage setup, and then him walking backstage to the actual stage and performing, was all one take. And the camera wouldn't just kind of stay in one specific spot. No, it would circle around Abel Tesfaye various different times. So it kind of puts you in that specific environment of what a superstar like Abel would go through as he prepares to put on a great performance in front of his fans. There's also these cool one takes and shots where they follow Jenna Ortega's character of Anima. And right at the beginning, you kind of get a sense for what her life is like, what her troubled past has led her to do. You follow her going into a house, she's crying, she's in tears, she's in pain, and you just see her get a gasoline tank and then just start flooding the entire house with gasoline and then just setting it on fire. Why did she do that? You don't know at this point, but you just know that her life has just been hard, or she's just causing chaos everywhere she goes. And so I really enjoy those kind of one takes that kind of just show you not only what the character is going through, but even gives you a little tidbits as a good way to explain, well, here's what this character is all about in some way. So really enjoyed that. Even Barry Keoghan as his character of Lee, he's like the manager of Abel. He gets his own little one shot where he just kind of has a very deep and honest conversation with Abel about getting him to perform, not having to listen to the critics, and to get over the girl that he's just heartbroken for as well. So everybody gets their moment in regards to these cool camera work and shots, which then leads me to say that the cinematography for the concert part of the film was also really well done. Might be her hyperbole, might be my bias that I really enjoy The Weeknd and his music, but I will say that the parts where Abel is performing in the concerts, how they use the camera and how they had like these sweet cinematic type of shots were just really top notch. I enjoyed it. There was various different times where you have the camera sway and circle around Abel as he's performing Wake Me Up, which again might be my bias because it's actually one of my favorite songs off of the Hurry Up Tomorrow album. But everything that they did from the concert just works so well. And it's a little bit of cheating, right? Because Abel is already a superstar. He tours the entire world, and he obviously has this type of a camera work already established. So it must have been really easy for him to kind of recommend, or the director to kind of recommend, like, hey, here's how we're going to capture you performing this song. So to me, again, might be recency bias, might be just very hyperbole, but I actually feel like some of the concert shots that they perform here in Hurry Up Tomorrow are some of the best compared to other films that also include, superstars that are singing. Like I can think of movies like Trap or Smile 2. Those movies also included some cool aspects when shooting on a stage, but I think Hurry Up Tomorrow had some really cool stuff. Second, and unfortunately, final pro for me is, and this might be a cop out to many of you, but the second pro is the music that's included within this film. It's a companion piece to the actual album, Hurry Up Tomorrow. So essentially, you're hearing songs like Wake Me Up, Timeless, Cry for Me. You're hearing Sao Paulo, all the different songs that kind of came out in the Hurry Up Tomorrow album earlier this year are all included, but I actually like the placement of where they put them. Like right from the beginning, the first song you hear in the performance is Wake Me Up. You hear Timeless played in a party. You hear Cry for Me when you have Anima crying after she burned the house. So again, the placement of all of those songs really worked for me. And again, I got to say, the theater experience of hearing these songs, these beats, and the lyrics, all of that with like very nice movie theater speakers just made that whole just experience of listening to the songs even better for me. So again, a little bit of a cop out. I already enjoy his music, but it just sounded so awesome hearing it in the theater itself. Okay, those are all of my pros. Let's move over to the cons. Why was this movie missing something? What was it missing specifically? Well, let me tell you. First con that I got to call out is Anima, the character that Jenna Ortega plays. Now, I have no problem with Jenna Ortega's performance. She actually did really good with what she was given. She ended up playing Anima as this crazy, obsessive fan of Abel. And so that was like essentially the entire hook of the movie. You have Abel meeting Anima at a low point in his life. They have a little one night stand, but then it turns ugly because she is an obsessed fan and she wants to know the truth about Abel and what he puts into his music. But there's various different moments in this movie where it made me as an audience member think, okay, is she not real? Is she a figment of his imagination? Because if she is, that makes this whole aspect very scary and eerie because Abel's just imagining all of this. She is just a part of his, subconscious and trying to make him tell the truth. But then, it just kind of never reveals itself. It never makes it clear. So I guess it's up to our interpretation. But even then, I never felt like she was an actual figment of his imagination. It always felt like, oh, she's just an obsessive fan. She knows all of his music, knows all the meanings, and she just wants him to tell the truth. And at one point, even kills his friend Lee. So this whole thing, like of this character, I actually wish they would have gone a little bit more into the realm of it's all in his head. It's all an imagination. She is not real. This anima character, she does not exist. It is just something that comes out in Abel's head because of all of the pain that he has faced, as well as losing out in a relationship. I feel like that would have been a much more interesting twist rather than just kind of having her be there as an obsessive fan. These are just my personal opinions. Again, I could be definitely wrong. And if I am, let me know in the comments what you think about that specific con. All right, moving on to the second con that I had. Apart from anima, this kind of also leans into a little bit of that imagination piece of it. There are certain parts in the movie where you go into Abel's head and you can kind of see him traveling through different types of rooms and experiencing different types of things. One piece of it is very scary. He sees a woman hunched over and then it, completely tries to scare him. It was a nice little jump scare in the theater. And then you have another moment where he faces his younger self. So I get like that type of symbolism in that way, but I actually wish the film included more of that, more of this type of horror and thriller elements, which the film advertises in the trailer, but I never felt like it was a thriller. So I wish there was more of that, more horror, more jump scares, more of what's in the mind of Abel as he is either preparing for a concert or dealing with the pain of losing a loved one. Like that's, I think, what this film really needed in order to have you leave the theater and be like, holy crap, like we just went into this very crazy and unexpected twist and turn type of a story with Abel and in his mind, and he's facing all this stuff, and all this represents the things that we try to lock away in the back of our minds. But I never got that sense of it. It was never that scary. It was never that thrilling. And so that's going to be, again, the second con that I have and really what holds this movie back. And again, I just wish it had those types of elements because that's what I felt was missing. We got a cool story. We got a cool understanding of like what Abel experiences before going out on stage, but I needed more of the psyche. I needed more of what was going in his mind. And the bits and pieces that they showed were cool, but it wasn't enough. Okay, enough of the negative stuff. Let's go back into some positives and give some awards for the film Hurry Up Tomorrow. Let's start with the MVP. Who is that critical piece that this film really needed in regards to performances? Again, you had Abel, Barry Keoghan, and Jenna Ortega all do really well with the characters and the writing that they were given and the dialogue. But if I had to choose one, I'm going to choose Jenna Ortega as Anima. Again, she was that crazy, obsessive fan. She played that really well. She just has this very ominous and scary look sometimes when she's like not smiling and her eyes just get really big. And that happened various different times as she was interacting with Abel. And so again, she comes off as very nice and sweet and caring. And then she eventually kind of shows that obsessive side. And so really like that performance by Jenna Ortega. Again, I feel like it would have been even better if it was more of like that figment of imagination because, again, she maybe could have gone even crazier or delved into something even darker. So, again, those are just my thoughts, but my favorite performance, Jenna Ortega as Anima. Best moment for me is actually going to be the concert part where you have The Weeknd performed Wake Me Up. But I actually like the parallels of when he performs a song in two different situations. The first time you see Abel perform Wake Me Up, it's at a moment where he just found out that his girlfriend wants to break up with him. And so it hasn't really hit him yet. So he performs and it just goes so smoothly. The performance is amazing. It's crisp. You could see that he has a lot of energy. And then you see it the second time after he's taken drugs, after he's thought about that breakup, and now he's in pain. And then you see him go through that performance, and it's exactly the same. It's almost shot exactly in that same kind of step-by-step shot that the first performance was. But this time, he's a little bit cockier. He's sweating. He's struggling to get through, and then eventually it leads to him losing his voice. And so having that kind of a moment where Abel has to almost recreate that of what happened to him in LA in real life, seeing that played out again in theaters, I thought he did really well acting that out of like having the pain, like knowing that he can't finish the song. He can't give the people what they want in the concert. So seeing those parallels of like seeing the Wake Me Up performance twice, once when he's in a good, in a good spot in his life, and then another one where he's just struggling was just a really cool way to compare the two. All right, and then the best shot, best frame, again, bringing it back to the concert elements of this movie. I have to call out that my favorite shot is when The Weeknd is performing at the beginning of the movie, Wake Me Up. He is on stage and you just see him. You can't really see him in his face. He's all kind of blacked out, but you just see the backlit of his stage just pop out and it just looks so outstanding. It's such a beautiful shot as he's kind of raising his hand, microphone in his other hand, and he's singing Wake Me Up, and you could just feel the energy of the crowd. That one shot was really awesome. All right, those are all of my thoughts in regards to Hurry Up Tomorrow. Hopefully, this kind of gives you a little bit of an inclination as to what my decision is going to be in regards to, is Hurry Up Tomorrow timeless? Can I see myself rewatching this movie again in the future? I thought it was okay. I enjoyed some parts about it, but I will say that as of today, Hurry Up Tomorrow is not a timeless movie. Again, it has the music elements that are awesome, the concert and how it's shot, the cinematography, everything looks great. There's so many incredible one takes that just circle around characters and you just keep seeing it go on and on and on. But the story is where this movie just kind of falters and it lets you down. I just really wish there was something that would hook me all the way through and make me want to come back to watch a scene. Now, really, the only scene I would want to go through again is watching him perform and wake me up again. So that's really the thing that would get me back. But other than that, there's no story element, there's no scene, there's nothing else that he goes through in this film that makes me want to kind of go back to it, which is unfortunate, but it's all good. Again, I really hope that Abel continues to try different things in regards to films and tries to come out with different types of ideas for movies. I hope this doesn't stop him from just the different types of negative reviews or things that might come out in it as well. But those are just my personal opinions. Who cares about those? I want to hear what you all have to say about Hurry Up Tomorrow. Did you enjoy the movie? Am I crazy to say that this has some of the best concert scenes and shots that have come out in movies? Probably am, but let me know down below in the comments what your thoughts are on Hurry Up Tomorrow. All right. Thank you to everybody that listened to the entire podcast and my thoughts all the way through. My name is Victor Vasquez. This has been episode number 129 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Make sure to check out next week's episode as we cover the new entry into the Mission Impossible series. That is right, we are talking about Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. I am super excited for this new movie, and it could be the final Mission Impossible for Tom Cruise. We'll see what happens after we end up checking it out. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to you guys later.